Okay, I think I'm going. All right, I'm pretty sure I'm live. Uh, Before I actually start talking about anything, I wanted to show you guys a meme I saw. Okay. This is a meme I saw. I just thought it was funny. It really has nothing to do with anything. I guess it is Martin Scorsese related. Um, but so I mean, it's as you can see, it's what it is. It mixes two of my favorite things ever. It mixes Rocky and Martin Scorsese. Now, Rocky obviously is Scorsese. Dead Apollo Creed is cinema, and Ivan Drago is Marvel. And I just thought that was, I just thought that was hilarious. I didn't make that. I wish I did. I thought it was really funny, and I thought I'd show you guys. Okay, now to the main feature here. I saw The Irishman, and it was so good that I thought I should dedicate an entire stream to just The Irishman. On my past few streams, normally I do like a movie review and like a movie topic. I try to have a little bit of variety, but I think that there's quite a bit to unpack with The Irishman, and it's a new Martin Scorsese movie. It's an event, and I just think that it deserves its own stream, and it's also extremely good. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a big Scorsese show. Like, I love everything the dude does. He's probably my favorite filmmaker if I had to pick a favorite filmmaker, and he is the man who made me want to be a filmmaker. His very first movie, Who's That Knocking at My Door? I remember the first time I saw that, and after I saw that, I was like, I want to make movies myself. So the dude's very, very close to my heart. He's very, very important to me. So every time a new Scorsese movie comes out, it's kind of an event for me. It's always a pretty big deal, especially since they're just great movies as well. They're usually some of the more memorable movies to come out that year, and that's never not been the case, like, ever since the 70s, whether it was like, whether he was doing Mean Streets, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, Taxi Driver, The Last Waltz, or in the 80s with Raging Bull, Last Temptation of Christ, After Hours, King of Comedy. The 90s, you had Goodfellas, and you had Cape Fear was a pretty good one, and Casino, and Bringing Out the Dead, which might be my favorite movie ever made. The 2000s, you had The Aviator and Gangs of New York and The Departed, which won him his Oscar. It was the first film he made that won him an Oscar and won Best Picture at the Academy Awards. 2010s, you have Hugo and Wolf of Wall Street and Silence. Like, he's always kind of at his peak. He's one of those filmmakers. He's been making movies for like 40 plus years. He's made a couple dozen films, and he's never made a bad movie, in my opinion. He's made some like weaker ones, like Boxcar Bertha is kind of like whatever, and New York isn't amazing. The Color of Money's alright. Kundun's alright. He's made some like weaker movies, but still good movies. Movies I would still say are like entertaining, that are not bad. Maybe if you were to compare like, The Color of Money to something like Silence, like, yeah, okay, maybe The Color of Money sort of blows, but just on its own, I think it's a really entertaining and fun movie. Oh, and when I was talking about the 90s, I forgot to mention The Age of Innocence. That's a great movie too. So here we have his newest movie, his first collaboration with Robert De Niro since Shark Tale, if you count that. But the first time he's directed De Niro in a feature film since Casino, which came out in 1995. So that's a really big deal. They're one of the biggest actor-director teams ever. Like, you have like Frank Capra and James Stewart, and you have obviously like Scorsese and De Niro. You have Denzel Washington and Spike Lee. And then you have, well, I guess I already mentioned Scorsese and De Niro. They're one of the absolute best, and every movie they've made together has been amazing. They made Mean Streets, Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, King of Comedy, Goodfellas, Cape Fear, and Casino. Those are the films that Scorsese directed that starred De Niro. Again, they worked together in Shark Tale. Don't know if that really counts, but if you're going to count that, there's another tally mark. One of my favorite actor-director teams is Herzog and Kinski. Those two made amazing movies together. But not only does this movie star a Scorsese regular who hasn't been a regular in a couple decades, De Niro, it stars other Scorsese regulars that he hasn't worked with in a long time. Joe Pesci and Harvey Keitel. Now, it's hard to really say Harvey Keitel's like a star in this movie. He's really only in like 10 minutes of the movie. But it's great to see Harvey Keitel in a Scorsese movie. I think the last Scorsese film he was in was Last Temptation of Christ. Last Scorsese film Joe Pesci was in was Casino. And he's he's basically been retired, not ever since that point. He did several movies for a few years after Casino. But basically since like Lethal Weapon 4, he's been just retired. He was in that movie The Good Shepherd, and I'm trying to remember his IMDb credits. I was just on his page, but he has like a couple acting credits in the past 25 years. 20 years is better to say. And to see him back, not only in like a starring role, but like for it to be a Scorsese movie, that's like just another really big deal. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just geeking out because it's like, holy shit, it's Scorsese with all of his buddies again. Really, the only person that's missing from this cast is probably Leonardo DiCaprio. Other than that, it's all been like the exact same people who he's been working with for years. I would have liked to see more Keitel. I would have liked to see more Keitel in the movie because he has like really only one scene. He's seen a few times throughout the film, but he only gets like one pretty good scene. I would have loved to have seen a hell of a lot more than him. But how does The Irishman? How is it actually as a movie? Like it's a gangster movie, sort of stereotypical of Martin Scorsese. He's known for his gangster movies. But of course, like his other gangster movies, it's different from everything he's done. It's not like Goodfellas. It's not like Casino or Mean Streets. It's very much its own thing. It is about. It's kind of hard to put it all like succinctly, like what this movie's about, because it's about a lot of things. It has a lot of themes. Thematically, it's about a lot of things, but even just the story, it's about a lot of things. But I guess to put it shortly, it's like about a guy who may or may not have been involved with the disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa. And that guy's played by Robert De Niro. You see him come up. You see him kind of get hired to do some jobs for the mafia. You see him become kind of a big figure in it. You see him meet Jimmy Hoffa. The movie does a really good job at establishing like who Jimmy Hoffa is and why he's important. And why he was so loved back then, and why his disappearance is a very big deal. You see him meet Jimmy Hoffa and get to know him really well. Jimmy Hoffa's played by Al Pacino, by the way, which that's another big thing. That's another really exciting thing about this movie is that freaking Al Pacino is in a Scorsese movie. Like, that's so cool. Like, you, back in the 90s when De Niro and Pacino made Heat together, like it was kind of an event, like, oh, these two great Italian actors making a movie together. And they've done a couple since then, nothing nearly as good as Heat, but then like finally like they're in another really great movie together, like, and not only are they working together, they're working with Scorsese, and there's freaking Joe Pesci, and it's so awesome. But this movie is incredibly ambitious. Like, this is one of Scorsese's, actually, I mean, I guess a lot of his movies are pretty ambitious, but this one is ambitious in a lot of ways, like, because it tells a big story with a lot of characters over the course of decades. And of course, the thing you've probably heard about is they spent a lot of time and money with the de-aging effects. Like, there's a lot of digital effects in this film where they de-age all the actors. People were kind of concerned about how that would look, if it would look weird, if it would look cheesy, if it would really change how you enjoyed the film, whether or not it was done well or done poorly, you know. So that is kind of a talking point, is the de-aging. If you've seen the trailer, like, you see De Niro throughout the decades in the trailer. You see him like in World War II. You see him kind of aging through the ages of like 30, 40, 50, 60, all the way up until, I don't know how old his character is at the very end of the movie, but he's got to be at least in his like late 70s. He's an old dude. And he's played by De Niro, who in real life is an old dude. So to see him play extremely young versions of himself, I will admit, is a little strange. Like, it's hard to look at De Niro in like the World War II scenes and see a young De Niro. Like, to me, he still really looks like the way De Niro looks today, but maybe with some like, I don't want to say Instagram filters. They're not that poorly done. It's just weird. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I'd say it was poorly done at all, but it's because he doesn't move the way he did when he was young. Like, I've seen a lot of 70s De Niro movies where he was kind of a scrawny dude and he had a lot of energy. Like when you see him in Mean Streets, see how ditzy he is and stuff and that, and kind of how dumb. I'm not saying he has to act that way. Like, this is obviously a very different character than the one he played in Mean Streets. But you would expect to see, like, different mannerisms. You expect to see, like, his mannerisms change. But that doesn't really happen. He's still very much the same dude no matter what age he's playing. And I don't know if I'm saying this as a criticism. Like, maybe he could have done more to, like, physically to kind of differentiate the time era and not just rely on the de-aging effects. Maybe it was a conscious decision for him to say, like, no, my character knows who he is and he's not going to change much. Like, he probably did consider that. But it is just kind of strange to, like, see a very young De Niro, but then, like, he still kind of has, like, a lot of bulkiness to his movements, as if, like, it's hard for him to move his joints because he is an older man. But that being said, really only when, like, the actors are trying to play, like, much younger characters did I find the de-aging stuff to be really noticeable. Or I mean, I guess you always notice it, but it's never, like, you never think of it as an effect. At least I didn't, except for when they were young. Like, when De Niro's playing young. When you meet Joe Pesci, he's probably already kind of close to middle age. So they never have to de-age him too much. But the bulk of the film, I would say, takes place while these characters are in their 40s and 50s. So that not only do they not have to de-age them too much, like, it kind of consistently stays in one era for most of the movie. So you kind of get used to the way it looks. And, like, I honestly just kind of forgot that they even had effects on them because it was very well done. And it's just, I didn't find it to be terribly distracting, you know. It's also an interesting movie in terms of, like, Jimmy Hoffa's his presence in the movie, because he's not in as much of the movie as I thought he would be. He's a major part, don't get me wrong. Like, he's in most of the film, and it's a 3.5-hour film, and he's in most of that. But the trailers, of course, like, they always show Jimmy Hoffa and stuff, but so I was under the impression that he was going to be from first scene to the very last scene, but he's actually not. There are large chunks of this film where he's not even a part of it, and in fact, the opening of the movie, I don't remember how far into the movie we were until he actually gets mentioned for the first time, but there's quite a large chunk of film that you have to sit through before Jimmy Hoffa comes into it, and it does a really good job of, like, building up his character, building up his importance, and when you finally get to meet him, you feel that, like, you feel like he's a celebrity. You feel like he's an important person. Like, he's a larger-than-life kind of character. And, of course, you have Al Pacino playing him, who's an extremely charismatic actor. So, like, you get Al Pacino with all his hoo-ahs and his and the crazy things he does, these crazy expressions, playing a character like Jimmy Hoffa. It really was perfect casting. And so it gives that character a lot of weight that I think other actors wouldn't have been able to bring to that role. And also, like, he's not in much of the film because the film it has a little bit of different structure than I thought it would. The movie doesn't end when all the plot points have wrapped up. You know, like the movie goes, and De Niro's in the mafia. He does a lot of hits, and he's like a bodyguard for Hoffa, and like Hoffa kind of gets boned out of his union thing, and he's in prison, and he gets out, and he tries to get back into the union stuff, and all this story is happening. And then when all that kind of wraps up, and then like a lot of the mafia people get pinched and sent to prison, you kind of expect the movie to stop there, but it actually doesn't. There's like kind of once the story's over, there's still like another half hour or 40 minutes left of the film. It's quite a long epilogue where De Niro is just kind of reflecting on his past. His character's reflecting on his past. His character is just kind of remembering like what was big to him when he was coming up, and what was important to him, and who were the big names, like who were the celebrities, and what was popular, and what were young people doing when he was young and when he was growing up. And now that he's like this really old man, like he's kind of out of touch with the rest of the world. He has a nurse who he talks with, who doesn't understand like the people who he's referencing and things like that. And he kind of feels like the world's been left behind. And during a lot of those scenes, that's where I kind of gathered like what I think this movie is really about, or at least one of the major things that it's really about thematically wise, is it's just kind of about like legacy, and it's about how the world changes, and it's about like what's really important to you, and it kind of takes a very personal sort of turn. Most of the movie, like it has some violence and stuff, and it's about the gang world, and it's really entertaining and energetic, and there's some politics mixed in there and some intrigue. But then the last like half hour of the film, it kind of turns into a really personal story, from De Niro's perspective, when a lot of the people who he knew are now gone. They've passed on. Whether they were whacked, or whether they died in prison, or died of some sort of cancer or something like that, died of old age. And he's kind of the last one standing of all those people he knew. And then he tries to talk to like his nurse about Jimmy Hoffa, and she's like, I don't know who that is. And he shows her some pictures, and she can't recognize the guy. And so like all of his friends and his professional friends and stuff, they're all gone, and he's really the last remnant of it all. And even his own family he's estranged from, and doesn't get to see or talk to them very much. And it's like it kind of has this downer ending, and he's just kind of left like remembering his glory days, and how the world has really left him behind, and left his era behind, and moved on to bigger, not bigger, but just move on to different things. It's a pretty sad kind of ending, honestly. Like I really didn't expect the movie to take that turn. Especially I think about Goodfellas and the way Goodfellas ends, because Goodfellas is kind of the same sort of thing. It's about this young guy, Henry Hill, played by Ray Liotta, who comes up in the mafia. And he has his highs, he has his lows, he has all these experiences, and the story wraps up. And then Ray Liotta at the very end of the film is just kind of left, and he's talking about like being in the witness protection program, and how he's talking about what life is now like for him. And he's like, oh, I used to have really good food, and now I eat spaghetti with ketchup on it. And then he kind of gives a sort of like ironic look at the camera before the movie ends. But it ends with him still being probably in his mid-30s, kind of still a pretty young guy. But in The Irishman, I thought was going to end sort of at that same point, but it pushes much further past that. It really wants to delve deeper than just that. And I don't know if that says something about like where Scorsese's at with his career. Maybe he's wanting to take more personal touches to these kinds of stories, because Casino and Goodfellas end sort of at the same point in their story, where like once the story's wrapped up, it kind of ends the film, whereas here it gives you a long epilogue. I'm not sure if that's trying to say something about the way Scorsese's feeling about his career. Maybe he now feels like he's gone, like his sort of era of filmmaking is gone. I mean, he's talked a little bit about that with the whole Marvel controversy, saying how back in his day, it was the personal films that got funded. It was the personal films that got financed. Whereas now it's just like these big $100 to $200 million comic book films that aren't even made by an individual. They're made by a committee of people. It just doesn't. It's just a very different kind of filmmaking. And maybe I'm reading too much into it. That's really the thoughts I was having. To bring up this meme again. It's like, Scorsese probably really does feel like the modern film landscape is just different, and he misses the good old days probably. Um, I don't know. I don't mean to drone on too much about all that, but those are some thoughts that came to my mind when I was watching the film, and I was thinking a lot about this during the film because it's paced very differently than Casino is. Like, if you've seen Casino, it's a 3-hour gangster movie, but it is the fastest paced film you'll ever see. Like, that, no movie has the energy that Casino has. It feels like a 20-minute film, even though it's 3 hours. It's so much quicker. But The Irishman's very different. Like, The Irishman, it moves a lot slower. There's a lot of scenes with characters just sitting at tables and talking, and not even necessarily talking about, like, oh, Jimmy Hoffa, what are we going to do to help him with this thing, or how are we going to take him out? Not even necessarily talking about that, but talking just about, like, the big scene with Harvey Keitel. Most of it is just kind of like a goof of, like they kind of mishear what the other person says, and so there's kind of this, like, miscommunication between everybody, and not everyone's on the same page, and then they kind of realize, like, oh, we're a little confused here, haha, we're silly, let's start this over. Like, there's a lot of moments where the movie just kind of lets, forces you to just kind of get in the groove of it, and I think that sort of sounds like a criticism, but it's really not. For me, it helped me, like, get invested with it, not just in the story or the character, but just, like, the world that the movie takes place in and the kind of people that the movie is about. You have lots of scenes with, like, one-off characters that are just in, like, a single shot or just get, like, 20 seconds of screen time, of these actors that you would never even recognize, and like, a lot of the stuff they're saying, like, I'm not really sure what it is they're talking about or what the importance is, but, like, I just love seeing them there because you see just, like, their Italian mannerisms, and, like, you see them chewing on big old cigars and, playing with their suspenders and laughing and speaking in Italian, and I just love, like, the way those touches would just kind of get you immersed in that world. I got a couple comments. Zinc deficiency. Zinc, you're always there for me. You're always there, keeping my comment section alive. He says Scorsese's good old days made tons of shit too. He's looking back with rose-tinted glasses. I'm not defending modern film's committee approach, but to say that everything before that was just fancy auteur projects is just bullshit. Yeah, he's definitely glorifying the good old days. Like, he's definitely, like the way De Niro sees everything was just like, man, things were just better back then. Like, he just fit in that world way better than he does in the modern world. I mean, granted, like, at the end of the movie, he is, like, 80 and he's about to die. So even if he could adapt, he really wouldn't have the ability to. One thing I really wanted to mention when I was just talking about how there's, like, so many legends in this film, I did want to give a special mention to how good Joe Pesci is and how different of a character he's playing in this movie. Joe Pesci, he's seen as, like, the loose cannon, and not every film he's in, but in a lot of the movies he's in, he's that dude, especially Scorsese movies, he's that dude who will hear the slightest slight towards him, and he will explode and just stab you in the face till you die. Like, he will scream all kinds of racial slurs and bad words at you and just murder you. That's kind of been his role in a lot of movies, especially Casino. And I really wasn't sure if it was going to be the same sort of thing this time around, because he is much older. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, this dude's in his 70s now. Like, will he have the energy to take a grown man to the ground and kill him? And he's not really like that. He plays a different role. He's a much more contemplative character. I don't think he raises his voice once in the film. But he has like a lot of like what would be the word? He has just not presence, but he still seems like a bigger than life character because when you first meet him, he meets it's kind of a chance meeting between him and Robert De Niro, and they shake hands and Pesci asks him, like, hey, what's your name? And De Niro says whatever his name was, I don't even remember. Frank, I think, and then he asks Joe Pesci, what's your name? And Joe Pesci doesn't answer. He just kind of looks at him and he just goes, what do you do, Frank? Kind of like, don't ask me what my name is. It's just little things like that just kind of make you like, oh, this dude's not going to kill you, but he is dangerous. And just to see like how much control and composure he keeps throughout the entire film makes him badass. Like I said, he's not like killing dudes, but all he has to do is say the word and dudes will end up dead. He has that kind of power. And it's just so great to see him give. I don't know if he plans on acting more. Like, I don't know if this is just like he's going to come back for one more role, or if he's going to come back, and do other movies again. But if this is like the last movie he does, it's just so great that this is probably like it's just great to see him have one last really great role. And he has a career of several iconic characters, like in Raging Bull, Goodfellas, Casino, Lethal Weapon, and I'd even say Home Alone. Like, he's pretty funny in that movie. My Cousin Vinny, it's another one. It's great just to see him have like one really good role, just to kind of send off with. And I hope he does more. If he doesn't, it wouldn't surprise me because, like I said, he hasn't really been acting for the past 20 years. But yeah, it was just really great to see him do one more role. I'm going to reference my notes here to see if there's anything I glossed over. It's written by Steven, I don't know how to say this guy's name, Zalian? Probably wrong. Steven Zalian, he's a pretty damn good writer. And he is like really fit for this kind of material. He wrote Gangs of New York, another Scorsese movie. He wrote American Gangster, and Clear and Present Danger, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I wrote Schindler's List. He wrote everything this dude writes is at least a good 3 hours long. Sorry, what does it say? Guadalupe. Oh, hey. How you doing? Sorry if I missed you saying it, but what's your favorite movie he's done? Probably my favorite movie that Scorsese did was Bringing Out the Dead. It stars Nicolas Cage. It has John Goodman. It has Peter Stormare, Patricia Arquette. It's about he plays an ambulance driver, and the movie takes place over the course of a weekend, and he's like kind of losing his mind because he is very stressed over his job. He hasn't saved anybody in a long time, and it's really starting to get to him. He's supposed to be this guy who people can rely on to save lives, but he hasn't been able to do it in a while. So so that guilt is starting to get to him, and because of that, like he's turning into an insomniac, and he's just not treating himself very well. Doesn't have a very good diet, things like that. And then over the course of this weekend, he just has a lot of crazy experiences with different drivers he's working with. The movie doesn't really have a plot, but it is just kind of about this man's grief and how the stress of his job is getting to him, and how he needs to try to find some sort of peace before it ends up just destroying him. It's a great, great film. So yeah, Bringing Out the Dead is probably my favorite from him. Other favorites would be like Casino. I love The Last Temptation of Christ. The Last Waltz, just because it has amazing music in it. Raging Bull, Who's That Knocking at My Door? That's the film that made me want to be a filmmaker. Anyway, so since I thank you for the opportunity to praise Bringing Out the Dead. I always take that opportunity anytime I can. But yeah, so anyway, Steven Zalian, he writes long epics, and he's written gangster pictures before. So he really is like the perfect writer for this kind of material. I wrote down some smaller movies he did. Some shorter ones, like he wrote Moneyball and Searching for Bobby Fischer. So he has a bit more range than simply just like 10-hour gangster movies. And I also want to give a special shout out to the cinematographer, Rodrigo Prieto, because he's been working with Scorsese for the past few films now that he's done. And he's been really impressing me. Scorsese pretty much has worked with the same DPs most of his career. He worked with Michael Ballhaus a bunch. I think there's been like a few DPs he's worked with that have shot like just a one-off film for him. But for the most part, it's been like Michael Ballhaus in the past 20 years. Michael Ballhaus and like Robert Richardson, both amazing cinematographers. And Hugo was the last film Scorsese made with Robert Richardson. He hasn't worked with Ballhaus in a while. In fact, I almost want to look up to see if Ballhaus has passed away. I don't know. But the first film he worked with Rodrigo Prieto was The Wolf of Wall Street. And visually, it was a kind of a geared down sort of film where Robert Richardson, he loves to have very exaggerated lighting schemes, and he loves to have exaggerated camera movements and stuff like that, where Prieto is not really like that. He's kind of more comfortable with just like locking his camera down in one place and just kind of letting scenes play out in one or two shots. And it's when I saw The Wolf of Wall Street, I definitely noticed like the difference in the visual flair of the film when he came in to be the DP. But at first I was sort of disappointed, but then like I had to think. But then like when the movie ended, I'm like, oh, this movie's already over. So like the movie didn't have as much visual flair as like the Richardson pictures that Scorsese did, but it still kind of had that energy though. Like Wolf of Wall Street's a 3-hour movie, and it doesn't feel like 3 hours. And then and so after Wolf of Wall Street, what was the one they did after that? Was that Silence? I think Silence was also very much the same thing. It's a very, very intense drama, and there's not a lot of visual flair. Like the frames, like what you see in the frame, like it's beautifully shot. But I'm not trying to say like I was disappointed with just how good it looked, but just like I was for a while I was just missing Richardson's, the way he would exaggerate the images. I was missing that, and I was missing the way he would move the camera. And Prieto doesn't really do that, but when I saw The Irishman, I was like, wow, this is actually really fitting for the kind of movie this is. Because like I said, Scorsese, he seems like he's kind of settling in kind of in his old age, and he's trying to take a very different approach to telling stories than he has in the years. Like I think Roger Ebert said that seeing a Scorsese film, and then I'm paraphrasing heavily right now, but he said like Scorsese's films would like, they really pop off the screen, they jump off the screen. Nothing about a Scorsese film stays on the screen. So you really feel like you just feel that kinetic energy that his movies would have. But it hasn't really been like that the past few movies he's done. And he just seems like he's becoming very, very confident on how he wants to tell his stories. Whereas like in a movie like Bringing Out the Dead, he would try a lot of things. He would experiment a lot with like fast motion, slow motion. There's a dream, I don't know if I call it a dream sequence, but like a dream-like sequence that was shot like in reverse. There's a lot of like really heavy, like kind of blown out lighting schemes where it's so bright on the actors' heads where like detail is actually like missing from the top. It just kind of looks just like a light on their head almost. Just a lot of experimenting like that, and he doesn't really seem to do that anymore. It feels like watching his movies now, I feel like I'm watching a more just confident filmmaker. There's a lot of scenes that play out kind of in one shot. There's one specific scene in Irishman I remember where De Niro gets really pissed at Pacino over something he says. De Niro storms out of the room, and Pacino follows him. He's like, hey, like I didn't mean to offend you and all this stuff. And the camera is set right next to the coat rack where De Niro grabs his coat and he's getting ready to leave. And the entire scene plays out in that one spot. And I was just trying to think like, man, Scorsese 20 years ago, I don't think would have done this. He would have had his camera dolly in on De Niro as he opens the door, and then the camera would have whipped around and cut to Pacino going, hey, I just think that there would have been a lot more there, but he's going for a different pace, it feels like, in his movies today. And so I don't know what if it was like a conscious decision to move on from a different DP, to say like, all right, Richardson, like I'm gonna hire somebody else now. I'm gonna work with him. I don't know if it was a conscious decision from Scorsese, or maybe Richardson wanted to move on, or whatever the deal was. But I'm really, really impressed with the work that Prieto is doing with Scorsese. I'll always miss the Richardson look. I'll always miss that. I hope they make more films together in the future. But Prieto, even though he's only made a few films with Scorsese, I wrote down some movies he shot for other filmmakers. Or maybe I guess I just wrote down. I didn't write down any of the films. I wrote down just the incredible filmmakers who he's shot movies for. So here, listen to this list. This is pretty impressive. He shot for Oliver Stone, Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu, Ang Lee, Cameron Crowe, Ben Affleck, Spike Lee, Curtis Hanson, even Tommy Lee Jones. He's a sought after DP for sure, and the more of his films I'm seeing, I can definitely understand why. So yeah, The Irishman. I feel like I haven't spoiled anything, and I really hope I haven't. I highly recommend it. I think, yeah, sound like a cliche, it's one of the best films of the year. It'll probably be on my list. I imagine I'll do like a stream after the end of the year of my favorite movies that I saw out of this year. And if I do that, I'm going to mention this one. It's, like I said, it is a long movie. It's 3.5 hours. I saw it in a theater. It is playing in some theaters around the country. I imagine only so it can qualify for the Oscars, because in order to submit your movie for the Oscars is you have to. I think it has to play in a theater for 2 weeks, something like that. I'm not sure. So this movie is playing in some theaters. I doubt it's going to be playing everywhere. I don't really know. I live in Portland, Oregon. So we have it. I think we still might. I don't know if we still do. But I saw this last week. But for everyone else, you're going to be able to catch this on Netflix in 3 days, I believe. It's the 24th. Yeah. On the 27th, you'll be able to catch it on Netflix. And the one benefit to seeing it on Netflix is you'll be able to pause it. Not that I thought like I wanted to pause this movie a bunch to kind of like take a break. It's just if you have to use the restroom, it's going to be very nice to be able to pause the movie, because when I saw like I said, in a theater with no intermission. So it's a quick 3.5 hours, relatively quick, but like I said, I think it might take some time to kind of get in the groove of the film. And it's just another great achievement from Martin Scorsese. He's never made a bad movie. He's kind of always been at his peak, and this is another really good one. Has great performances. The movie's incredibly ambitious. It tells an epic story. Tells Jimmy Hoffa, and I will say, we don't really know what happened to Jimmy Hoffa. And to be fair, and to be a little embarrassingly honest, I don't know much about the Jimmy Hoffa story, but to my understanding is we don't really know what happened to Jimmy Hoffa, at least not like concretely. And this movie will show you kind of like what may have happened to him, what probably happened to him. I think there's a lot to see in this movie. There's a lot of reasons to see it, and I'm really glad that I did. And there's no wasted characters in the movie. Like even the characters that get just quick little like one-liners or something, they're always really funny, and like they always feel so authentically like Italian. And one thing I was really, really glad about was Ray Romano actually had quite a bit of screen time. I am a big Ray Romano fan. His show, Everybody Loves Raymond. I know this is kind of weird, but his show, Everybody Loves Raymond, is probably my favorite television show of all time. I love it to death. And when I heard like he was going to be in the new Scorsese movie, I was pretty excited about it. When he was in the trailer, that made me excited. But I remember thinking like, hey, he's probably not going to be in much of the film, but he actually is in quite a large portion of this movie, and he plays an important role in the trailer. You see him like being like De Niro's lawyer, and he just kind of has like a quick little like joke scene where he's like, "Come on, did you do it? Like, you can be honest with me." I thought that was really all he was gonna get. I thought he was gonna get like just that one scene, but no, he's actually in the majority of this movie. So I was just really glad to see that. The only person I wish we saw more was Keitel. I would have loved to see more Harvey Keitel, because not only has he not really been a big part of Scorsese's career in a long time, I just haven't really been seeing him in movies very much. I don't know if he's like doing stuff that I'm just not seeing or I'm not aware of, but like Keitel needs yet another revival of his career. He's one of those that's had several. Like he was in Bad Lieutenant in the 90s, and he worked with Tarantino a few times, and so it's like, oh, he's back. Why he needs another one of those. Maybe Scorsese will cast him in a major role, because he's just so good. I love him so much. But anyway, that's really my thoughts on The Irishman. I think I covered everything I wanted to say. Zinc deficiency, you've been kind of dead this time in the chat. You've only commented twice. Normally at this point, about the 40-minute mark, you've commented 1 billion times. But yeah, that's like I said, that's mostly what I wanted to say. I don't know if I'm going to be streaming next week. I'm not really sure what my plans are. It's your mom. Zinc deficiency says your mom. Well, no, you. How about that? Next week is Thanksgiving, so I don't know if I'm going to be back on Sunday. I don't know if I'm going to have really anything sort of prepared to do. So if not next Sunday, definitely the Sunday after that. I'll try to have something, though. I mean, when I say I won't have anything prepared, it's not like I take a long time to prepare these things. I take maybe like a half hour, just to kind of, and most of my preparation is just the screen, the stuff I put on the side of the screen. I just try to find funny pictures to put on there. That's mostly what I do for preparation. So we'll see. And if I don't see you guys, happy Thanksgiving, and all that good stuff. And we'll see you next stream.